G'day, Big Al Story here. New story, A Hunter's Smile. Let's check it out. The pub contained a very exact mix of local farmers and foreign backpackers. Its wooden frame stood high, almost exactly 2/3 of the way up the coast between Brisbane and Cairns. The time of day was hidden somewhere in the afternoon, an exact moment where the story of the day begins to relax and the fiery potential of the night flickers. Clear blue eyes, lean tanned skin. His clothes were casual, handsome jawline, white teeth. Although he was thin, he had a solidness about him. Certain backpackers have this look, and some don't. It's a look that is surrounded by calm and supported by a solidness. It's gained from years on the road and not knowing where the next bed might be. A face that doesn't have to think. It just knows who's a threat and who's not. It's a difficult look to describe, but when you see it, it's obvious. It's a very exact look. It's a look that lets a backpacker sit at a pub all by himself. Just his beer, his heavy-set hiking boots, and a solid face. The two girls sat down at their drinks across the table from him. Their hair was pure blonde, heavy shoes, casual shirts, light jumpers, and big smiles. They had a lot of layers on, but he knew that underneath they were exactly what they were. Young, strong, athletic, European backpackers. So you girls heading up or heading down? They giggled at his Australian accent like Japanese schoolgirls. He didn't push for an answer. He just smiled, wrapped his rugged hand around his glass and took another sip. The girls briefly glanced at each other as they sucked on their straws. Their moment was a smaller version of what he imagined girls do when they chat in the bathrooms. He couldn't read exactly what their eyes said, but he was satisfied that they were smiling. 2 days, 16 hours, he said in his strong accent. Another smile and another swig of beer. All three of them laughed. He caught the eye of the girl on his right. She seemed younger, slightly prettier. As her eye contact lingered, it quietened the laughter between them all. The older girl on the left fell completely silent, and when he caught a glimpse of that, they all laughed again. 2 days, 8 hours. Behind his blue eyes and another swig of beer, he made a conscious note to keep his calculations to himself. "So where are you travelling?" the girl on the left asked, the slightly less pretty one. Another swig of beer and silence. He looked at his glass. "I'm heading to the bar for another drink." As he stood, it was obvious their drinks were still full. They nodded politely as he walked to the bar. On return, he placed the glass on the table and readjusted his mental note back up to 2 days and 16 hours. Whatever they spoke about while he was away, it was clear they trusted him even more now, quite completely. The conversation was very upbeat, but the language barrier forced it to limp along at a superficial level. "So have you girls seen the Barrier Reef yet?" he questioned, knowing full well it would inform him if they were heading up or down the coast. With more giggles, the younger lady on the right turned her head sideways, like a little girl, and said, "Not yet." Her vulnerability was quite advanced. So obvious was her body language that it shocked the young man, but his smile stayed calm. Glancing across to the lady on the left, he saw that she too was surprised. The look she gave her friend was like an older sister, surreptitiously tugging at her sibling's dress under the table. "It's beautiful. I'm sure you'll enjoy it," he said. Moving the conversation along, he addressed the one on the left, the one acting like an older sister. "So are you two from the same country? Your accents are similar, but different." Behind his eyes and his cool questioning, he knew full well that his indirect question would tell him exactly what country they were from. "We both live in Denmark," she said. He smiled straight into her eyes. "We grew up in neighbouring towns, but our parents sent us to the same kindy because they worked together." "Oh really? That's nice." Without prompting, she gave more information. "I grew up in Verkland and Sandy lived in Tium. The kindy we went to was in Tium." "Oh really? That's beautiful that you've known each other for that long. It's really good when you can have someone that He swigged more beer before finishing his sentence. Someone that can look out for you. 3 days exactly. The words repeated casually in his mind as he continued his investigation. And what are your plans? He probed towards the slightly older woman on the left. Her face immediately hinted at the suspicion that he had witnessed earlier. Suddenly he felt more connected to her and her suspecting frown, more connected than to her friend. Before he could answer, he adjusted and strengthened his investigation. I mean, what are your plans for tonight? Instantly her suspicion evaporated, and she unravelled their plans for the next few days, and for tonight. Well, we're not due in Bowen for picking until Friday, so we have exactly 3 days to kill. Her hinting smile was this time directed back to her friend. Tonight we're unplanned, she said. He leaned back on his stool and sipped slowly. He looked past them and out the window at his ute, a white dual-cab Land Cruiser. He smiled back at both of them, keeping the potential of revealing the vehicle to himself. Almost on cue, the bigger sister moved, stood up and said, I'm just going to the ladies' room. She stood at the end of the table waiting for her little sister. There was no kick under the table to snap the younger one out of her smile, but he laughed as he witnessed their awkward moment. They both walked to the bathroom with his eyes peering deep through their clothing, towards what he might do with them later tonight. The last sip of his beer was timed perfectly. With his plans simmering deep behind his blue eyes, he exhaled and placed the glass on the table. Another 20 minutes of light-hearted chit-chat and he would lure them to his ute. The cute one in the back and the suspicious one in the front, just in case. After 5 kilometres, they'd be asleep. He'd simply drive them up the coast, but not too far. When the moment was just right, he'd turn left and head inland. He looked at his ute again, and it slowly took him back through his memories. Drifting deeper into the origins of his own journey, his smile dried up. Moment by moment the emotions left him, but the face that remained was not neutral. A demonic face, as still and as empty as the glass in front of him. Arriving firmly within his face, he found himself back where it all began. Back on the farm. He was 8. So recently had it died that there were no flies that had claimed the body as their own. Standing with a stick in his hand, his psyche was poked, and would remain as such for many years to come. Intrigue and excitement flooded down his arms and into his hands. His face witnessed the wrenching of the stick, beating the kangaroo's body. He couldn't stop. He refused to stop. By the time he was 12, he owned his own gun. With a homemade silencer and a calculating mind, he created exact timeframes to kill more and more kangaroos. Too many per month and his dad would get suspicious. Too few and his dad would become desensitized to the reality that kangaroos were being murdered. A random bird or a rabbit could be added to the schedule if it came along at exactly the right time. And if his dad never found the bodies, it was the cherry on top. But by the time he was 17, his dad was fully aware of his habit, but no one said a word. Dingoes and wild dogs were almost as easy for him to physically kill, but it never gave him the same intrigue and excitement. Standing and looking at the dingo's tongue hanging from its mouth, he remembered feeling exactly nothing. His dad always said, "A lion will run at you, a kangaroo will hop away, a cow will just stand there." Growing up on the farm, he had eyes only for the kangaroos. They wouldn't immediately hop away when they saw him. As he stalked them, he always looked for the exact distance. A distance where he could make eye contact, but they wouldn't disappear. After a few years, they began to avoid him. A deep internal sense drove them away as soon as they caught sight of his ute. When he got his license, his horizons broadened. The innocent kangaroos saw him coming, but they never got away. Growing up on the farm provided many lonely moments to find exactly where he sat on the predatory scale, lion, kangaroo or cow. All he really knew is that he felt good when he stood over a harmless animal. Kangaroos were the prize. Under his devilish blue eyes and his straight-edged smile, it was only ever two words that went together: harmless and beauty. As they walked from the back of the pub, he stalked them with his friendly smile, all the way back to the table. His friendly face was already set firm just before they exited the bathroom. He knew exactly when they would come around the corner. After thousands of kills, he'd developed a sixth sense for these things. A kangaroo could drink from a dam for minutes before suddenly and inexplicably recognising him. The exact time to take the shot was somewhere after eye contact and just before they bounded away through the thick scrub. With every step from the back of the pub to the table, their beauty increased. An exact mix of harmlessness and beauty brought his excitement to a peak. Two young and beautiful women ready for the slaughter. His face remained calm, friendly, open. "Well, I need a water," he said as he stood up. He held up his empty glass. "Can I get you lovely ladies a water?" They took the bait. With a simple smile to each other, he could instantly see the girlish conversation they just had in the bathroom. "We will have daiquiris if you're offering." "Sure." Walking to the bar with his back towards them, he revealed another smile. Not a fake one, not a maniacal one, but one of pure intrigue and excitement. Daiquiris wouldn't work for his plan, so he simply asked for 2 lime cruisers with glasses. After receiving the cash, the bartender smiled and moved to the next patron. Exactly a third of a tablet clinked into each glass, and he stirred them immediately with a plastic fork. With 2 bottles and 2 glasses, he walked back to the table. "Something's wrong with the ice machine. No daiquiris for the moment," he said. "Not the problem," the elder sister said in her strong accent. He saw briefly into the future as she slurred indiscernible noises through a thick accent and very exact mix of cattle-grade sedative. Taking her first sips, they barely noticed that he didn't get a water or daiquiris. "So where are you from?" the younger sister asked. "A cattle farm. Not really that interesting." "Oh, really? Whereabouts?" she responded, barely capable of containing her excitement. As her lips touched the glass for another sip, he felt safer. No harm telling secrets if they'll be taken to the grave. "The feedlot is about 300 k's down the coast, and inland about 200. "Oh, wow," she said. "Were there a lot of kangaroos there?" "Yeah, there were." He laughed quietly. There wasn't a more cliched question he could ask the 2 backpackers, but he asked it anyway. "You girls seen a kangaroo yet?" Her eyes gleamed as she leaned in closer. "No, we have not." "Not even a dead one? On the side of the road?" "Well, we've seen some on the side of the road, and we saw one in the distance, but we haven't seen one up close." "I could show you a whole heap." This time they both sat up straighter. "Could you really?" On the way into town he saw a whole heap of them on the golf course, but his mind wasn't taking them there. Straight up the coast and then inland at the perfect spot. The perfect road would reveal itself at exactly the right time. "Have you got a car?" the elder sister asked. He nodded confidently and pointed at his ute sitting outside. They couldn't see the sun, but far beyond the vehicle in the depths of the west, it was in a moment of setting. "We could go now, actually. This is the perfect time to see them. They come out to eat at this exact time every day. Just as the sun's setting, when the temperature drops and the sun's still up, they come out for a feed." "Could we get back here in time for dinner?" they asked. "I can't see why not." His ute sat there as plain as day, but it was perfectly disguised. The white colour attracted little attention. Its Land Cruiser status positioned it well within thousands of others, up and down the coast. His carefully thought-out design camouflaged it between the pig-hunting farm utes and the grey nomads. The retractable gazebo hanging from the side made the local hunters think it was probably just another camper tourist. The double spotlights on the front and the lack of camping gear helped the grey nomads to assume it was probably just another local hunter. Tourists that didn't know the difference knew no better. The windows were tinted at exactly the right shade, dark enough to obscure vision, but not too dark that they would attract police attention. The fridge that sat across the back of the cabin didn't really look like a fridge, or a dog cage, or a toolbox, but it was perfect for keeping bodies at the exact right temperature, until the exact right location could be found. It was a proven outfit. He smiled at them again. As easy as shooting kangaroos at a waterhole, he thought. He listened to them make a rough plan for the next few hours. He didn't intervene, but took the chance to look at the other men at the bar. His relaxed smile remained flat as images of his dad began to flow. His dad never really fit in at the pub back home, and because he never really fit in, he fit in perfectly. When the other men discussed purchasing cattle, he always just sat there and said nothing, unless he was asked. If prices were down, most of the men spoke at length about buying as many as they could. If his dad was asked, he would always know exactly the number he would buy, usually 416 or 383 or some other very specific number. The number was always formulated with a few factors in mind: how many head the land could support, climate patterns, his predictions of the buying market, and the most important factor was simply his indescribable intuition. It was no secret that he was known as the local crackpot, but he was always welcome at the pub's round table, simply because he was very accurate. The one year he was completely wrong and had a surplus, he took care of it in a reputation-altering manner. Before the other farmers could even see the drought, he started killing off healthy cattle. He recorrected by 106. 106 healthy cattle deleted and left to rot in the field. The smell of death drifted 20 kilometres back into town and straight into the pub. One season later, sitting back at the round table, he shared with the men that he was buying a very exact amount of barley. They scoffed. Nobody had attempted to grow barley in the region for 100 years. Their scoffing held a slight reserve, as they knew there would be a formula, a very exacting logic based on an intuition that might just work. He told them of his prediction of the nitrogen level that 106 head of healthy cattle would produce. The more he spoke, the more the laughter around the table quietened. One season later, as he bought several rounds for the men, their laughter was non-existent. Almost on cue, the young man's imagination was pierced by the men in the pub laughing hysterically. His face warmed to a smile. His eyes slid back to the table. Something beautiful looked back. Two beautiful and innocent backpackers. Taking a casual look at the sky through the window, he said, "Almost time to get going. One more drink'll do it, I reckon." "I love kangaroos," the younger sister said eagerly. "Yeah, they're an interesting animal. Did you know?" The girls leaned in closer as he started rattling off trivia about kangaroos. "That they have one baby every year. The joey is only about 2 centimetres long when it's born. After that it crawls up the outside of the mother's body and enters the pouch." With the phrases stored bone deep in his muscle memory, he slowly rattled through more and more. "The tail is like a fifth limb, great for bounding forward 8 metres in a single bound, not so great for walking backwards. They can't actually walk backwards. Did you know they're one of the few animals that can actually pause a pregnancy?" Completely disconnected from the information he was presenting, he could see the two women were actually very interested. So he kept going. His mouth kept moving, but his mind explored his past. Images of killing 103 head of cattle walked slowly through his mind. His dad killed the first 3, and then together they went to the shed to make a silencer. It seemed that the crack of the gun was unsettling the rest of the herd. It was a lot easier to coax them into position and put a single silent bullet in their head, exactly in the right spot. 103 heavy bodies hit the ground without a single bit of intrigue or excitement passing through his cold-blooded mind. Cattle was his dad's thing. His thing was kangaroos. A kangaroo can move at about 60 kilometres an hour. The books say they can jump over obstacles up to 3 metres high, but I've seen them jump heaps higher. Did you know there's over 60 species of kangaroo? The time became exact. Their absorbing Danish eyes hypnotised, faces drooping ever so slightly as they fought the cattle-grade sedatives. Outside, the sun threatened to bounce away beyond the horizon. As his mouth continued with more kangaroo facts, his inner smile whispered his favourite quote. Exactness and neatness in moderation is a virtue, but carried to extremes narrows the mind. Deep below his lips, down in his chest, right near his heart, is where the words came from. His father stood there, always in the darkness, motionless, ready to repeat his one and only quote. Exactness and neatness in moderation is a virtue, but carried to extremes narrows the mind. The women's eyes rolled drunk. They barely noticed as his inner poetry spilled into the rambling facts about kangaroos. He smiled and readjusted his calculation. 2 days exactly, he stated with an entrenched inner confidence. In a slurring Danish accent, the older sister straightened her posture and asked, "What are these times that you keep giving us?" With no smile and a perfect quietness in his voice, he said, 2 days is exactly how long I have to dispose of your body. 48 hours and you're gone. She smiled and leaned sideways on her chair. He stood on the spot and held his hand out for the younger sister. The first hint of true excitement coursed through the afternoon's hunting adventure. He knew instantly that he'd left the walk to the ute about 2 minutes too late. He needed to stop talking and get them to the ute. Fast. He took one step around the table towards the younger sister. In his periphery a shape moved. Years of hunting trained him to sense movement before detail. Before his eyes rested, he was fully aware that there was an issue to be neutralised. Moving his body to look at the threat head-on, he saw it clearly. A short, female backpacker. Washed, mousy blonde hair, almost dry. No product. Her short body, curvaceous, solid, calm. As they made eye contact, her face changed. She went from happy to politely concerned within a single step. Her bouncy walk slowed down, but not too much. On her faded black shirt, a wolf howled at the moon. Across the perky terrain of her chest, the predator's eyes glowed blue. He could feel the lightning spearing through the clouds and clawing at the rocks at the wolf's feet. She was very short, but it was quite obvious that if there was an older sister, this was definitely it. With a loud Canadian accent, she introduced herself and held out her hand. "Hi, I'm Sally. Pleased to meet you." As their hands touched, a predatory buzz snaked up his arm. "My name's Eric," he said. It's difficult to describe, but when you see it, it's a very exact look. They both knew with certainty that Eric was not his name. Glancing at her drunken friends, and then straight into his eyes, she stopped herself from looking at her own hands. Although her face was solid, she was already far beyond simply recognising the threat. With a reassuring smile, she was well into pursuit mode. She could feel his DNA on her hand. She knew it would be important. She kept it swinging safely beside her leg. His DNA evidence was on his glass too, but she looked straight at him. She just smiled and sat down. He smiled and stood up. "Thanks for coming to look after your friends. I think they've had just a few too many." All four of them smiled their different smiles. A moment hung in the air. Glancing at his rugged hands, she was even more certain. Something's not right. Eventually, the silence was broken by the men at the round table laughing. He left, bounding into his Land Cruiser and scurrying up the street. There was just enough light for the camera on her phone to capture his plates. She could see his fingerprints clearly on his glass and put it to one side. She kept the girl's spiked glasses. Her smile was an exact mix of softness and solidness, the perfect demeanour to get the police to take her story and evidence seriously. After getting her friends to the local emergency, she breathed a sigh of relief when she was informed they would be fine in the morning. She went back to the pub, ordered a daiquiri, and took her seat at the round table. The end. By Big Al Story. That story, a bit disturbing, but it's called A Hunter's Smile, and I don't know where I came up with it. It's a bit disturbing. I remember that when I wrote that a while ago, I remember as I was writing it, It had nothing to do with kangaroos. And then I put it into ChatGPT and it said, oh, why don't you put some kangaroos in it? It didn't quite say that, but it mentioned something about a kangaroo. And then it's really odd because then the whole story, a lot of the story revolved around kangaroos. Interesting. Anyway, if you would like to see more of my stories, subscribe to Big Al's Story on YouTube and on Facebook. I think I'm on Instagram too. But yeah, check me out there. Okay, Grace, you ready to film?
Yeah.
So this story is about...
Tell me where to go.
Now, this story is about a guy that grows up on a farm, and he is a serial killer, but he starts off by finding kangaroos and killing them on his own farm. So we're going to go for a walk. I reckon we're going to find a kangaroo.
Stop.
Yeah, you can't be in front of the... Because you're not in... There's no little girl in this story. It's a teenager looking for kangaroos. But can you listen out for kangaroos, please? Freddie? So you'll probably hear them jump through the grass. So nice and smooth like this. You film out that way, Grace. Thank you for watching and listening to my story called The Hunter's Smile. It's quite a disturbing story, but that's just the way it is. And I want to talk quickly about the core thing of what I do, which is not writing, but it is something called Creative Dad, which is where I help other men to engage and create with their kids, which I think is really, really important. That's what my dad did with me. That's what I do with my kids, and I want to share that with other men. And as part of that, something that I feel is really, really important is that particularly creative people, but I guess all dads, but particularly creative fathers, it's important to find a space where you have complete freedom to create what you want to create. So all of my stories are not necessarily about parenting or father-son relationships or father-daughter relationships, parenting. None of it is about that necessarily. I have complete freedom to write about whatever I want to write about, as long as it's not illegal, I guess. But it's sort of no coincidence that all of my writing generally has like a lot of stuff related to parenting. So you can probably tell from that story that there's a bit like a father-son issue. But yeah, all my stories are free because I really value that, to talk about anything, but they often come back to parenting, and there's a few other themes. I won't go into them now, but I really enjoy that freedom. And if you want to check out my other stuff, it's called Creative Dad. Go check it out on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. We're doing some creative stuff there. And yeah, thanks for watching and listening.
Run with me.
All right, let's all run. You ready? Let's go. Come on, Freddie.
Oh, I have a stick.
Oh, well. I need a wee.
Glass in my hand.
I'm going this way.
I'll go this way instead.
Oh, stop. Stop, girls. I found one.
Ow.
Sorry. Hey, girls. I've got a job for you. Okay. See it just there? What I want you to do... Can you see it's all right in front of me? What I want you to do, Grace, is run behind me. If you're comfortable, run up just through that direction there.
Go up here.
Yep. You want to go with her, friend?
No.
Should we chase it soon? Should we chase it, Franny?
Where is it? Oh, there.
See, we're going to pretend we're walking away from him. It's got a joey. See the joey? Hopefully it doesn't beat us up.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not daddy.
Let's get him. All right, we'll get Grace. Oh, this will be good. There's no houses in the footage here. That's what I want. Oh, there we go.
Move here. Here. You're hopping away.
We'll just go near him a little bit.
No! I'm going to the path.
Go round. All right, we'll press stop and bring me the camera.
I gotta get him.
Yeah, just bring it this way.
Yeah, I'm hopping away. Good, good. It looks like it's safe to say. It looks like.
Go, chase her. Chase, go. Go get Grace.
Okay,